Formula One isn't just about roaring engines and fearless drivers, it's also about rules. But sometimes, these rules are so bizarre you'd think they were jokes. Like the time half points were handed out for a race that never happened, or when drivers had to wear FIA-approved underwear, or the season finale that double points were awarded for absolutely no reason. Over the years, the FIA has tried to improve the sport, but sometimes ended up rewriting the rulebook of absurdity instead. This is the strange world of Formula One's dumbest rules. 1. Dropped point system, 1960s to 1990s. It sounds absurd now, but for decades, Formula One used a point system where drivers couldn't even keep all the points they earned. Instead, only their best results counted toward the championship. Wins, podiums, even hard-fought points finishes could be thrown in the trash just because the season was too long. On paper, it was meant to level the playing field and stop one driver from running away with the title too early, whereas in reality, it led to one of the most infamous title controversies in F1 history, the 1988 season. That year, Alain Prost delivered one of his greatest performances, scoring 105 points across the season. His teammate Ayrton Senna scored 94. Normally, that's a clear victory for Prost, but the dropped point system only counted the best 11 results. Prost had to throw away more points than Senna, leaving him with 87 against Senna's 90. The title went to Senna, even though Prost had scored more across the year. Fans were furious, and Prost himself called it the most unjust championship ever. To this day, the 1988 season is remembered less for McLaren's dominance and more for how a rulebook quirk robbed Prost of what should have been his crown. A rule meant to create fairness instead handed F one of its most controversial injustices. 2. Tire change ban, 2005. In 2005, Formula One decided to make tires last an entire race. No pit stops for fresh rubber, no second chances. Unless your tire was punctured, you were stuck with the same set from start to finish. On paper, the FIA claimed this would cut costs and reward consistency. In reality, it created chaos. Tires wore down to the canvas, lap times dropped off a cliff, and drivers were forced to nurse cars instead of racing flat out. But the true disaster came at Indianapolis. At the United States Grand Prix that year, Michelin discovered its tires couldn't safely last more than a handful of laps around the banked oval section. 14 drivers on Michelin rubber were told not to race. When the lights went out, only 6 cars, the Bridgestone runners from Ferrari, Jordan and Minardi, took the start. The rest pulled into the pits. Fans booed, threw bottles onto the track, and many walked out. Broadcasters called it a farce. The Indianapolis debacle became one of the sport's biggest embarrassments, a dark day when Formula One looked more like a circus than the pinnacle of motorsport. The tire change ban was dropped immediately after the season, a failed experiment that proved one thing. Sometimes, rules designed to save the show can destroy it completely. 3. The double points finale, 2014. If Formula One has ever felt like a video game power-up gone wrong, it was the double points finale. For one season only, 2014, the final race of the year awarded twice the usual points. The idea? Artificial drama. Bernie Ecclestone and F1 management wanted to keep the championship alive until the very last lap, even if one driver had dominated the season. It sounded clever in the boardroom, but on track it was a gimmick. Take Abu Dhabi, 2014. Lewis Hamilton had led the season, crushing Nico Rosberg across 19 races. But under the rule, if Hamilton retired in the finale, Rosberg could have stolen the title despite being clearly second best all year. Fans called it manufactured tension. Drivers hated it too, with critics comparing it to handing double goals in a World Cup final. In the end, Hamilton won the race outright and wrapped up his second championship. But the backlash was brutal. Media slammed the gimmick, fans booed the idea, and even team bosses admitted it cheapened the sport. The daft experiment lasted just that 1 year. F1 quietly dropped it, never to be seen again. Today, the Abu Double stands as a warning. Formula One doesn't need cheap tricks to create drama. The racing does that on its own. 4. Fuel credit qualifying, 2003 to 2010. For 7 long years, qualifying in Formula One came with a catch. From 2003 to 2010, drivers had to set their grid position with the exact same fuel load they'd start the race with. It meant Saturday wasn't about pure speed anymore. It was about strategy, bluffing, and sometimes straight-up trickery. A car could go out light, smash in a rapid lap, and snatch pole position. But come Sunday, it would pit almost immediately, dropping back into the pack. Fans watching didn't know who was genuinely fastest. Qualifying became more about who played the fuel game best. The rule produced some bizarre moments. One of the most famous was the 2009 Hungarian Grand Prix, when Fernando Alonso took pole in a Renault that was running on fumes. The celebrations didn't last. Within a handful of laps on Sunday, he was in the pits, and never a real contender for the win. It got worse when championship fights were distorted. A driver might look like a hero on Saturday, but be exposed as a pretender once the fuel loads equalized. Instead of clarity, the rule blurred the truth of who was genuinely quickest. By 2010, fans had had enough. Broadcasters hated explaining it, drivers hated the mind games, and teams admitted it made the show confusing. When refueling itself was banned in 2010, the fuel credit rule disappeared with it. Looking back, it's remembered as one of F1's most misleading rules. A trick that made Saturdays flashy, but left Sundays feeling hollow. 5. Driver coaching ban, 2014 to 2016. Between 2014 and 2016, Formula One introduced one of its strangest rules. Teams were banned from coaching drivers over the radio. No advice on engine settings, no gearbox warnings, nothing. Drivers had to figure out problems themselves, even in cars so complex they needed engineers to keep them alive. The madness came to a head in 2016. At Silverstone, Nico Rosberg's gearbox started to fail. His engineer told him how to save it, and Nico was slapped with a 10-second penalty that cost him second place. Just weeks earlier in Baku, Lewis Hamilton spent laps stuck in the wrong engine mode. His engineers knew the fix but weren't allowed to say a word. "Just let me race, man," he shouted, finishing a frustrated 5th. Fans ridiculed the rule, drivers fumed, and the media called it unworkable. By the end of 2016, it was scrapped completely. Looking back, the radio ban wasn't just silly. It turned drivers into passengers, punished for problems no human could solve without help. 6. Aggregate qualifying, 2005. Formula One has always played around with qualifying, but 2005 saw one of the strangest experiments ever: aggregate qualifying. Instead of a single session, drivers had to set laps across 2 different days, Saturday and Sunday. The times were then added together to decide the grid. Sounds simple, right? It wasn't. Fans and broadcasters struggled to keep track, and even drivers weren't sure where they stood until both sessions were over. The whole thing turned qualifying, usually one of F1's most exciting moments, into a confusing math puzzle. The worst part was how weather could wreck the system. At the European Grand Prix that year, Saturday was wet and Sunday was dry. That meant some drivers were punished with slow, soaked laps, while others cruised in clear conditions, leaving the grid scrambled for reasons that had nothing to do with speed. For casual fans, it was incomprehensible. For hardcore fans, it was infuriating. The spectacle of watching the fastest car grab pole, one of the purest joys of F1, was lost in a haze of combined lap times and TV graphics. The backlash was instant. By mid-season, drivers were openly mocking the rule, and fans were begging for its removal. The FIA quietly killed it off at the end of the year, admitting the format simply didn't work. Aggregate qualifying showed that sometimes overcomplicating the basics destroys the very drama the sport depends on. Pole position should be about 1 lap, 1 shot. Anything else just feels wrong. 7. Grooved tires, 1998 to 2008. Sometimes Formula One invents rules that sound clever on paper but look absurd on track. Case in point, grooved tires. From 1998 to 2008, slick tires, the ones with maximum grip and no tread, were banned. Instead, every F1 car had to run on tires with 3 or 4 grooves carved into them. The idea was to slow cars down by reducing grip, making races safer. In reality, it was a decade-long farce. Drivers hated them. Reduced grip meant longer braking distances, clumsy cornering, and cars that snapped unpredictably. Overtaking, which was already tough in the late 90s, became almost impossible because the loss of grip killed any confidence to attack. Races turned processional, strategy overshadowed speed, and fans were left frustrated. Michael Schumacher once described grooved tires as the worst invention in modern F1, and he wasn't alone. Engineers spent millions trying to claw back performance, undoing the very reason the grooves existed in the first place. By 2009, after years of complaints, slicks returned, instantly making the cars look faster, more aggressive, and more fun to watch. Looking back, the grooved tire era feels like Formula One fighting against its own DNA. This is a sport built on pushing the limits of grip and speed. Taking that away didn't make the racing better, it just made it look silly. 8. The 107% rule. Not every bizarre rule lives in history. Some still haunt the sport today, like the infamous 107% rule. The idea is simple. In qualifying, if you're not within 107% of the fastest time in Q1, you don't make the race. On paper, it's meant to stop dangerously slow cars cluttering the grid. But in practice, it's been a headache. Take this example. If pole is set at 1 minute 40 seconds, you must clock a lap under 1 minute 47 to qualify. Sounds fair? Not really. Smaller teams with tiny budgets are punished the most, sometimes missing races entirely despite showing decent pace in practice. And then comes the messy part. Exceptions. Stewards can wave you in if you were fast enough earlier in the weekend, or if your poor lap was down to a crash, traffic, or changing weather. That's where the rule gets absurd. It stops being a hard line and becomes a judgment call. Fans and teams have seen weekends where one car gets waved through while another, in almost the same situation, is sent packing. In a sport obsessed with precision, the 107% rule often feels more like theater than fairness. It's still around, a relic that keeps tripping up rookies and backmarkers, not because they're unsafe, but because Formula One can't quite let go of an old idea. 9. The 5-second escape. Here's a rule most fans don't even know exists, and yet every driver's career depends on it. According to FIA regulations, an F1 driver must be able to climb out of their cockpit, completely unassisted, in under 5 seconds. Helmet on, belts tight, car still intact. Fail the test, and your car doesn't pass inspection. It sounds reasonable. After all, safety is non-negotiable. But in practice, the rule has led to some strange moments. Cars are now designed not just for aerodynamics and speed, but also to make sure a driver can wriggle out like a gymnast under a stopwatch. It's why cockpits, despite the Halo device, are tested with drills where drivers practice scrambling free again and again. The awkwardness of this rule showed itself in Japan, 2025. Rookie Jack Doohan crashed, and when he struggled to climb out quickly, critics pounced. Technically, that delay would breach Article 13.1 of the FIA's safety code. Suddenly, fans weren't talking about lap times. They were debating if the man should even be on the grid. The 5-second escape is one of those strange regulations, created with the right intentions, but in reality it turns into a weird spectacle. Because Formula One isn't just about being fast anymore. It's about proving you can sprint out of your own car like it's an Olympic event. 10. Half points for a parade. If you want to talk about a rule that turned Formula One into a punchline, you don't have to look further than Spa 2021. Torrential Belgian rain, sheets of water, zero visibility. Racing was impossible. But instead of calling the event off, F1 pulled a bizarre trick. Send the cars out behind the safety car, complete 2 laps, then wave the checkered flag. That was enough to declare it a race. The result? Half points were awarded. Max Verstappen won. George Russell scored his first podium in a Williams, and fans who sat in the rain for hours got nothing but a glorified parade lap. Lewis Hamilton called it a farce. Social media erupted. Even casual viewers wondered, how can you give out championship points when no one actually raced? The fallout was instant. Broadcasters trashed it, fans demanded refunds, and the FIA scrambled to clarify the rules for future washouts. It became a lasting symbol of bureaucracy gone mad, the kind of loophole that turned a dangerous rainstorm into one of the sport's most embarrassing spectacles. Because in Spa 2021, the world saw the unthinkable. A Formula One Grand Prix where nobody raced, yet history books still recorded a winner. 11. Appendix L safety gear mandate. In Formula One, even a driver's socks and underwear are regulated. Yes, you heard that right. According to Appendix L of the FIA rulebook, every single piece of clothing, gloves, balaclava, thermal layers, even underwear, must be FIA-approved fireproof gear. The logic is sound. In a fire, every layer counts. But fans and drivers alike can't help laughing at the idea of the FIA policing underpants. During race weekends, stewards have been known to check and fine drivers for wearing non-compliant underwear. At one point, Sebastian Vettel even joked about stripping to prove he was following the rules. While it makes sense for safety, the optics are absurd. In a sport obsessed with cutting-edge aerodynamics and million-dollar technology, the thought of champions being written up over their socks feels bizarre. F1 may have many silly rules, but none more personal than this one. And that's it. From dropped points to half points for no racing, Formula One has proven it can be just as chaotic off the track as on it. Some rules shaped history, others embarrassed the sport, and a few still hang around today, making fans shake their heads. If you enjoyed this breakdown of F1's most ridiculous rules, hit subscribe, drop a like, and let me know in the comments which rule you think was the absolute dumbest. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.